Hi there, Christine Glover here to chat about all things writing. Today I'm really excited to introduce you to my really good friend and author, Lexi George, who writes the most amazing, light paranormal romances that'll just make you laugh out loud. There's quirky characters, there's all kinds of happy fun in these incredible stories. I've been fortunate enough to actually start at the beginning of the series after she sold the first book, Demon Hunting in Dixie. And today she is not only just going to read us an excerpt of the story from her fifth book, she's going to share her world building methods with reference to the famous fifth book in the series, Demon Hunting with a Sexy Ex. That's a pretty fun title. I like it. Yeah. I've just finished reading it and it's fabulous. So please join me in welcoming Lexi. So Lexi, first of all, like I really did enjoy reading the book. It's awesome. You're very funny and witty. I love the first book. The first book totally hooked me. Where you come up with these crazy, insane ideas, I have no idea, but they're fun. So I love this quirky Southern Alabama world. Again, another neat twist. And it's filled with just interesting characters and very unusual rules. Just tell me a little bit about how did you come up with the series idea to begin with? Where was it born? How was it?
Okay, it was like this. I had written another book, a fantasy, a straight up epic fantasy, and I couldn't even get anybody to look at it. So after 130 rejections, I figured out that the universe was telling me I needed to step back and write something else. So I decided that since romance was my other love, I would write a romance. And since I love magic and magical critters, I decided paranormal romance would be a great idea. Well, there was a writing prompt there was an online writing group. I can't even remember the name of it now. But the thing was, if you wrote a first chapter of a paranormal romance, they'd give you feedback. So that's how it all started. I decided that I wanted to write about immortal, hunky, alpha male demon hunters. And people were always telling me you should write what you know. And I thought, well, what do I know? Well, I know small towns because I grew up in one and I live in one. And I know the South because I'm very Southern. So I decided that I would make up a fictional town, and I started writing the first chapter. All I had was the title, and it was Dark Encounter, because I thought it was going to be this dark, angsty book. And I opened it up the first chapter, and the dog started talking in the first chapter, and I thought, oh, this is not a dark encounter. This is a demon hunting in Dixie. So that's how it started. I just wrote a first chapter and then I just built on it from there. And I am a pantser, which means I make it up as I go. I usually have the title. I know who the hero and the heroine are. I usually know what their general conflict or issue or problem that they have to overcome is going to be. And that's about it. I start writing. And as I write, I get to know the characters, and one thing folds into another, and weird stuff happens, and characters show up that I don't expect. And about halfway through the book, I'm ready to throw it all out the window. But I keep persevering, and by the time I'm 3/4 of the way done, I know where the story's going, and I know how it's going to end. But that first half is misery because I am just fumbling around in the dark.
Yeah, it's pretty familiar, except I try to plot and that doesn't help me either. You have sent me like a little excerpt that you had said that you would read to us from this story. Do you have that ready for?
I do. This is a very short excerpt from Demon Hunting with a Sexy Ex. This is the fifth book in the series. And the hero is Duncan. And the heroine is Cassandra Ferguson. Everybody in this little county where she lives calls her the witch, but she's really not a witch. She's what they call a demonoid. She's half demon, half human, and she really, and for all intents and purposes, is a sorceress. And of course, Duncan is an alpha male immortal demon hunter. He fell in love with Cassie 200 years earlier. They were madly in love, and then he found out that she was part demon, and he rejected her because, hey, he's a demon hunter, and she was anathema. So he left, being a dickwad, and he came back, immediately realized he'd made a mistake and he couldn't live without her. He came back, but she had gone. He'd broken her heart, so she'd left. And for 200 years, he's been looking for her. And they finally get reunited in this book, and she wants to have nothing to do with him because he broke her heart. So what's that old saying about fool me once, shame on You fool me twice, shame on me. Well,
Exactly.
she's not going to be fooled twice. But she's finally, in this scene, she's finally accepted the fact that she still has feelings for him, but she's just going to keep it physical and not emotional because she's not going to let him in and break her heart again. So that's this scene. So Duncan is the hero and Cassie is the heroine. Go away, Duncan, Cassie said. We're no good for each other. I could go away, I suppose, but I would only return. His mouth twisted in an expression of self-mockery. I fear I am a pathetic creature where you are concerned. Cassie gazed at him in mingled panic and exasperation. There was nothing pathetic about him. The harder she resisted, the more he would take it as a challenge. So where did that leave them? An affair was the logical solution to their problem, in a hair of the dog that bit you kind of way. Let's have sex, Cassie said, taking the plunge. He blinked, and Cassie felt a ping of satisfaction. She'd thrown him. Good. Friends with benefits, you know? She gave him a bright smile. Want to go for a roll in the hay? You wish to engage in coitus with me? Yep. Plain, uncomplicated sex, she said. Two consenting adults enjoying one another's bodies. No mushy stuff, no jealousy or insecurity. Sex, and no strings, and then we move on. Agreed. But with one condition. His eyes were flinty. I do not share. I have exclusive use of your body while the agreement holds. Of course, she said, striving to sound nonchalant, though her stomach was doing a roller coaster of free fall. He'd called her bluff, damn him, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. He turned and strode away. Wait, Cassie said, where are you going? He stopped in the doorway and looked back. To the kitchen to prepare a repast. Don't you want to talk about, Cassie gazed at him in frustration. Our agreement? Talking is overrated, and I would have you rebuild your strength. I mean, to make the most of our bargain. He walked out, leaving Cassie rooted to the spot.
That is awesome. I love it so much. He's a great character. I have a better feel for him now that you've read kind of in his voice the way you envision him. That's really cool. I think you just have such a way with wittiness and quirkiness and words.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Funny to me. So like moving back into like the world building, like you've had, this is now your fifth book.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me some of your basic rules for building the world in general that anybody, any author, any writer could take with them and maybe incorporate into their writing as they move forward?
Well, I think that what you have to think about in any story that you write, whether it's contemporary or commercial fiction or genre fiction, is you have to keep up with your characters, your details. You have to make up some stuff, and then you have to keep up with your stuff. So the main thing is to keep a story Bible, because you will forget your own story. You will forget, you'll get down the line and go, were his eyes gray or were they green?
Yeah.
With me, my characters I try to have one little quirky thing that they say that kind of differentiates them. That's their little personality quirk. For instance, one of my characters in book 4, her favorite expression was like mother trucker. Yeah, would never curse, but that when she was really excited, she would say mother trucker. So those are the kind of details you have to keep up with, and that's why it's important to have a story Bible, because if you don't write that stuff down, you will forget it. And as I told you when we were talking last week, I had a tragedy a couple of years ago. I dumped an entire quart glass of iced tea on my computer, and guess what? Computers don't drink iced tea. So I had to buy a new computer, but I had foolishly not saved my story Bible into my OneDrive. It was on that computer. And so now when as I'm writing book 6, I have to do it the old fashioned way. I have to go back and scan through all the other books and try to keep up with, did this person know this person? Have they met? What does this person know about this person? I mean, that's the hardest thing about writing a series. Especially if you've got an ensemble characters like I do, is trying to keep up with who knows whom, because readers are sharp and they will gig you if they figure out you got a plot hole because this person's never met the other guy, or he doesn't know about this god, or he doesn't know about the albino Sasquatch, or whatever you're writing. So keep a story Bible. Yeah, as far as world building, your setting is a character.
Yeah.
In my world, the setting is Hannah, Alabama, and it's a fantasy southern town with a quaint little main street, and the people think that it's just the most boring little small town in the world. They don't have any idea that there's all this supernatural woo-woo going around them. They have no idea the supernatural undercurrents are there. So the town itself is a character. The main eating place there is the sweet shop. The woman that runs or owns the sweet shop is a character. The waitress is a character. All of that is world building. Every time you bring somebody in, some detail that makes your world visible to the reader. And so the setting is very important. The first thing with me when I'm trying to start a story is I have to figure out who my heroine is and who my hero is. My heroes are all Dalbani demon hunters. So I have to figure out what is their story, what makes them different from their brother warriors. In one book, my hero was a loner. He had not seen his own warrior brothers in thousands of years because he felt unworthy. He blamed himself for his twin brother's death. So that was his character arc and his story. And every one of those heroes is different, even though they're all Dalbani demon hunters. They all have different backstories and different character quirks. Duncan, for instance. Duncan is interesting as a Dalbani because he is probably the only Dalbani that has a sense of humor. And the reason that the reason he has a sense of humor, he's very mischievous, and his brother warriors don't know what to do with him because the Dalbani, emotion is superfluous. They're not programmed to have emotion, and that's what when they come to Hannah, Alabama, and they fall in love with Southern girls, their whole world is rocked because they're feeling love for the first time. They've known battle rage and lust and all those kinds of things, but they've never known real love. But Duncan fell in love 175 years ago, and then he lost the woman that he loved by his own act. Mm-hmm. So that has changed him fundamentally as a demon hunter. He has been looking and grieving and waiting and searching and mourning the loss of this woman for 100 and something years. And so that has changed him. And he is not the same as his other brothers, and they don't know what to do with him. He is a very oddball.
I like him. He is very different, and he's not going to take no for an answer, but he's going to let her guide him along a little bit because he knows he really messed up. He's really good too with a secondary character, Verbena Van Pelt, who comes up. She's the daughter of the Skinner clan. She's involved with the Skinner clan, and she has a special gift. I really like that character. She's so Southern and yet so she's so devoted to him, and he's been very good to her. Tell me more about Verbena, where she came.
Well, Verbena's name came about, and this is how world building happens to writers. I was driving to Birmingham, and on my way from my little town to Birmingham, I go through a little town called Verbena, and I thought, oh, that's a great Southern name. Awesome. So she's named after a little town in Alabama, and Verbena was raised by the Skinner family. They're all demonoids, meaning that they all have powers. All demonoids are not created equally. The Skinners have a little bit of power. They're basically petty criminals. They can shift, and when they shift into things like raccoons and possums and that kind of thing. They're not nice people. Well, to put it frankly, they're white trash. And so that's what that's just call a spade a spade. They're white trash. And so she was raised by this family, and she had no talent. She couldn't shift. She had no magical ability, so they considered her a dud. So they threw her out in the yard and literally made her live with the dogs and made her eat scraps and things like that. She's had a terrible life. And they actually, in book 3, they sacrifice her to the demons because they think she's a throwaway. They use her as basically as bait. And the heroine in book 3 saves her, and that's what turns her life around. And she now has become a freed person. She's freed from the Skinners. And as she goes through, she's in book 3, 4, and 5. She's in the book, and she's in book 6 too. So that's interesting about secondary characters. You create somebody and you think they're going to be a one-off, and then they end up being in every book. But she's a secondary character, and she's a very interesting. She has no self-esteem, although she's very smart. And she turns out that Verbena is actually a very powerful supernatural. She just has a very unusual gift. Her gift is not direct magic that she can employ, but when she's around another supernatural, she enhances them.
Wow.
So if you're already powerful, she makes you like supernova powerful. So it turns out that the Skinners threw away their most powerful asset, and they didn't know it. The girl that they despised and mistreated and abused, they ran moonshine. And when they kicked her out and tried to kill her, and she ended up going to live with somebody else, guess what happened to their moonshine business? It dried up because their moonshine was awful. It went rotten because she was the one that was enhancing everything. So then they realized, we messed up. We need to go get Verbena back. But Verbena's not going back. Verbena will never go back. And she's a very interesting character because she's very strong, but she has a heart of gold. She's also very sad in a way because she's had such a hard life. But but I love.
The first scene that she's with Cassie, Cassie cooks her dinner, and Cassie's like, "You should go to bed. You should rest," because Cassie takes her in, and she's like, "Well, my mother didn't raise me to eat a meal." Of course, she says it in the nice Southern vernacular. You do that very well. To do this and to have a meal, and she would have my butt probably if I didn't clean up after. She has a very strong ethical sense of morality and order and how things need to be done, and I really like her. She's a neat character. Sugar the Sasquatch was interesting too. Like, where did you come up with an albino Sasquatch?
Well, all of my books have a supernatural critter in them. Let's see. In book 1, there's a talking dog and a fairy cat. In book 2, there's a demon dog. In book 3, there is a creature called the Wampus Kitty, which shrieks outside, kind of like a banshee. It shrieks outside your house if somebody's fixing to die. There's also in book 3 a vegetarian zombie. And in book 4, there's a Rumpelstiltskin kind of imp, and a giant catfish, and an evil flesh-eating witch. And in book 5,
the Howling Hag is the evil flesh.
Yes, the Howling Hag. In book 5, I needed a supernatural critter, and I thought, I need to have a Bigfoot. So I decided I would make him an albino, and his name is Sugar, and he has been raised by old lady Hall, who didn't have children. She's human, and she loves Sugar, and she's raised him, and he's a very sweet character. And I love, he's in this book I'm writing. He's in book 6 also.
He is so cute.
He's so
very sweet, very loving, very tender to Duncan after he gets intoxicated on chocolate pie. Let's talk a little bit about food in your
book. I like talking about food.
Speaking of chocolate pie, it's a little bit different here in Hannah, Alabama. What's going on with the chocolate and the demons? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, when I first started writing this series, of course, you have these supernatural kick butt Dalvani warriors. The only way you can kill them is to cut their head off, kind of like in the Highlander series. If they get wounded, they heal instantly. And one of my friends said, they need to have a flaw. They can't be too perfect because Superman is too perfect. So you need to have it. So I thought, okay, what's their flaw? Well, I had already said they couldn't get drunk, that drugs and alcohol don't affect them. And I thought, how funny would it be if these immortal 10,000-year-old demon hunters come to Earth and find out they can't eat a bag of M&Ms without getting sloshed. So that is their Achilles heel, is chocolate. And you find out about it in book 1. And there's a lot of funny stuff that goes on with chocolate, because drunk demon hunters are not a good thing.
No, they are not. They're fun though. I really like that whole twist on it. There's another little twist about the setting in Hannah, Alabama. There's no cell phone.
Right.
What happened there? Tell us about that.
Hannah, the reason Hannah is a magical vortex. And the reason it's a magical vortex is that the town was built on a little series of rolling hills that were formed when a meteor hit the Earth millions of years ago. And normal people don't realize it, but the meteor basically is the source of the magic, the meteor dust, and also it knocked a hole basically between the realities, like a portal. So
Okay.
things can come and go. There's a thin spot in Hannah, and things can come and go. But the main reason that supernatural creatures come to Hannah is because they are drawn by the crater.
Okay.
But the normal people that live there have no idea. I wanted to have a reason that all these things were coming there.
And does the crater somehow interfere? The crater does somehow interfere with
crater. Yes, right? The crater. You can't get. It kind of knocked me back to. And I'm telling my age here, but when I grew up, we didn't have cable TV. Mm. We had 3 channels. I grew up in South Alabama. We got the channel we got 2 channels out of Mobile, and we got 1 channel out of Pensacola. And that was it. And they came on at a certain time, and they went off at midnight with the national anthem. And if you wanted to watch TV after midnight, you sat and watched what we call the ant fight, which was the little static, when the little gray little static was playing.
We had the same thing in northern Manitoba.
So anyway, I thought it was a good thing to do because it made sense to me that the crater would interfere with cell phone reception. I actually live in a little hilly town, and our reception here is spotty. And I also thought it would make it better and easier when these people get in predicaments. They can't just pick their cell phone up and call.
Right.
Because it gets you out of that issue, because we're so connected now, all of us. Mm-hmm. We're never away from everybody else because we have computers in our hand at all times. Yeah. That was a good twist, because that way they're almost in a frozen, land before time kind of thing. So
I really like it. I think it's unique. I also think it's just really unique that it's in Alabama, that this crazy insanity of these demons and demon hunters and magic and all of that, it's in southern Alabama, where you would expect to find it, really, right?
I told you, well, first of all, I've always loved magic. I loved fairy tales, and I loved mythology when I was a kid. My 2 favorite, I've read some science fiction, but I really like fantasy, and I really like romance. And so paranormal romance was a really good fit for me.
Absolutely.
But, I was a lawyer by trade, and people were always, when I was first started out writing, people think, what's the rule they tell you? Write what you know. Write what you know. And I thought, I don't want to write about law. And then one day it dawned on me, I know about small towns. I can write about small towns. So I just took all the things I like and put it in this small town. So
it's been a great escape.
You have to like what you're writing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
in my opinion. I think you have to really like what you're writing, whatever that is.
Right.
If cozy mystery is your thing, then go for it. Write because if you won't enjoy it, and the readers won't enjoy it if you don't like it.
Yeah, that kind of bleeds through into the writing, I think. And really, to create a world is huge, and then to keep that world going and going and going and going, it's a massive undertaking. And I find it so interesting, like, you have, like, not only do you have, like, really interesting primary and secondary characters, you also have some really interesting villains. Like, they're very fleshed out, 3-dimensional, hop off the page villains as well. Like, in the 5th book, who would you say are your top villains, like, that and why?
Well, you've got a number of things going on. In the 5th book, you've got Zeb Randall, he's basically he's crazy because he's become obsessed with a magical artifact called the orb. Think Gollum and the ring in Lord of the Rings, his precious. He's that obsessed with this thing called the orb, and it's driven him crazy, and he's a werewolf, and he's batshit crazy. So he does all kinds of awful things. So he's a good one. There's also the Skinners are in this book because Verbina's in book 5.
Right.
They're trying to make Verbena come back to them because they realize they screwed the pooch when they kicked her out, and they need her. So they're, hell or high water, they're going to get her back, and they're evil. And at the end of the book, they end up kidnapping her, and she and Cassie have to escape. And I mean, they're really scary, evil, nasty people. And then if that wasn't enough, there's a crazy mad god that's roaming around because his name is Pratt. And Pratt wants the orb, the same thing that the werewolf is obsessed with. And they're kind of fighting over the orb and killing people over the orb. So those are the three main villains, I would say, in that book. Yeah.
Yeah, you do a very good job with painting them. I'm very impressed with. Like, again, they can't be two-dimensional. They have to have like their own history and why they are the way they are, right?
Yeah, there's another bad guy. She says it in air quotes. There's a bad guy in book 5. They call him the Rogue, and he is a Dalvani warrior that has basically gone rogue, and they're all after him. He has committed the ultimate sin, which is to walk away from his creed and his vows. And he's taken up with Pratt, the evil god, and he's in cahoots with demons. So they're all after the Rogue. And so he's an interesting character because you find out he has a story too. They all have stories. Everybody has a story, if you think about it.
Interesting dynamic that happens, I feel, between Evan Beck and Taryn, what are they called? The
Kirvani. Yeah.
When she first comes upon them after Duncan gets drunk on chocolate pie, and Evan's there, and he's butt naked, and the interplay between those two was sort of interesting to me. I kind of caught a little something between them, even though the Kirvani, say it again. How do you say it again? Kirvani. They're supposed to be like this aloof warrior woman race that just goes and kills people, and they're not into emotion whatsoever. So I keep wondering, are they going to have a story, or are you?
That's so funny that you ask it. This is really funny because I had Taryn. I had a different love story for her in my head, because in my head, once I started writing, I thought, okay, these two are going to be the next two, and then the next couple will be this. Well, a friend of mine, actually a member of my writers group, came in my office one day, and she said, I am so shipping Evan and Taryn. And I said, what? She said, yes, they are so hot for one another. They're going to make such a good, and I was like, no. Taryn doesn't end up with Evan. No. If Taryn ends up with, and then I went, oh crap. Well, then after she put that in my head, it came out on the paper. And they could not stop talking to one another, and they would not leave one another alone.
Yeah.
And now they're this big love story. What I do is I have a main love story, and then I have secondary love stories in each book. And sometimes that secondary love story becomes the main love story in another book, or sometimes I just carry through several books and their love story gets resolved that way. And that's probably going to be how Taryn and Evan are, because they
very
are
complex. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you do it, because I could not. What you do is so intricate and complex to me, and clever, and I don't even know how you keep it all straight. Like,
I'll tell you the truth. One of the reasons that I have had such a hard time finishing book 6 is because it's book 6. And I have 5 full-length books plus a novella that are all set in the same world with demon hunters. And so when you get to book 6, remember I lost my story Bible? Yeah. I have to go back and I have to look at everything and make sure that, that I'm being consistent. And you always miss things. I found something, and going back through book 1, just this week I found something that I went, oops, I got to go fix that. I mean, it's just hard to keep up with it. And it is hard. And that's one reason that I am struggling. Plus, the hero in the book I'm writing right now, book 6, he's a character, he's the sheriff. And he's a character that has been in every single book, but he's been a walk-on. He's that character that walks across the stage, waves at the audience, and walks back off. So when I started writing his love story, I didn't know anything about him. I knew he was going to be falling in love with the Kirvani demon hunter. Well, but what's his story? What's his background? What's his special power? What's his hang-up? And all that kind of stuff. It's been a hard go, but thank you for that. I do enjoy it, and the fun thing is when characters just appear, like walk in and go, hey, I'm so-and-so. And it's only happened to me twice. It happened to me when I wrote the novella back in 2011, I guess it was. the character in the novella was a runaway bride, and she finds out on her wedding day that not only is her perfect husband a demon hunter, but she's been fundamentally changed and she's no longer human, and she's pregnant, and she keeps thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have ET's baby. So she jumps in her Mary Kay Pink car with the cans on the back and all the glitter and stuff, and she runs away from the wedding. And she has a sugar crash. So she pulls into a 7-Eleven or some little convenience store to load up on sugar because she can't drink because she's pregnant. So she's going to have sugar instead. She walks into this convenience store, and the woman standing behind the counter was fully formed. That was the first time that ever happened. The second time it happened was when I wrote book 3, and it takes place in a shifter bar. It's called Demon Hunting in a Dive Bar, and the owner, the heroine, is the owner of the shifter bar. She's a demonoid. Her name is Beck, and she runs this bar for supernaturals. And the door opens up, and this scruffy character walks in. Think Willie Nelson, with a long gray beard and an old like Grateful Dead T-shirt. And his name is Toby. He told me, he said, I'm Toby Littleton. I'm the bouncer at this bar.
Those are kind of what I like to call the magic moments.
Yeah. That is, you're plugged in. And I think that's why, have you ever noticed that there'll be a bunch of movies or books about the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Why are we having all these, whatever movies? Why are vampire movies big right now? Or why are whatever? And it's because I do think we tap into this universal intelligence, and the ideas just kind of swirl around and they drop into different people's heads, and we do different things with them.
Yeah, I totally love that. I'm fully on board with that analysis. I think it's certainly how it happens for me. Like, people are like, where do you get your ideas from? And I'm like, they just sort of happen. And then I have to take them and make them into something real. And then the other thing that you have to kind of consider is, not just the characters, not just the setting, not just the different kind of little quirky elements, but you also have to consider, what are your themes? What themes consistently run through your stories? What are some of the themes that seem to be recurring through your books?
Well, I read about that one time. I read that every writer has themes, and I thought, do I have themes? And so I started thinking about it, and I guess I do, because redemption seems to be a big thing in my books. The other thing that acceptance of others, and the fact that you only see the top layer of people. Everybody has a story, and you only see the part that they allow you to see. And so a lot of times my characters surprise themselves and surprise other people by the things that they reveal about themselves. And so I guess that self-discovery, redemption, acceptance, forgiveness, those are the big ones, I think. Self-forgiveness, because in book 5, Cassie has a lot of issues, because she was in the 1800s, she was raising her human brother's children, and she loved those little children. There were 3 of them. She loved those little children like they were her own. And she lived out in the middle of nowhere on a farm in Alabama in the 1800s. And so one of the children got scarlet fever, the baby. And so she was nursing the littlest one in the cabin, and she told the other 2 to stay on the porch and not to get off the porch. So what do you think the 2 little kids did? They wandered off into the woods because their aunt told them not to. And the baby died because there was nobody to treat the baby back in the middle of nowhere, no doctors, no medicine, 1830s. And then when she went looking for the 2 little children, she finds that they have been killed. And so she cannot forgive herself, because she feels like a murderer, because she was only 18 at the time. So it was a huge responsibility for her to take. And that's part of the reason. And then Duncan broke her heart.
Yeah.
And she basically said, bump it, and left and went to Europe and tootled around Europe for a long time. Up until past World War I, she was there, which is a nice thing when you're immortal, because you can go live several lifetimes. But she, in the book, she partly blamed Duncan for the death the children, because if he had been there, if he had not gotten mad and left because he found out she had demon in her, he, as a Dalvani warrior with supernatural powers, he could have healed the baby, and the other two wouldn't have wandered into the woods and gotten themselves killed. So
Right.
she blames him and she blames herself. So she has to overcome all of that. She has to work through all of that and learn to forgive herself and to accept the fact that she did the best she could and it wasn't her fault.
You know, somebody once said, everybody has a broken bit. Something is broken
Right.
in them, and they're doing the best they can with whatever they have at that time. And I think learning to forgive yourself is one of the hardest things to do, especially when there are deaths and children involved, because you're always going to question what you could have done differently to prevent that from happening. And then you do want to blame somebody else for it, because
Of course.
how can you carry all that overwhelming guilt yourself?
That weight. You can't carry that weight.
So that's a really strong current. And you know, you can just feel that she wants to be with him, but she's afraid. She's afraid to open her heart again. And I think that's really well done as well. And I love, you know, the 5th book, Demon Hunting with a Sexy Ex. It's a fun book. It has lots and lots of layers to it. Lots of interesting characters and dynamics, and you can just go, it's a great escape. I highly recommend the entire series, really, honestly. I love what I have in my bookshelf. I have some signed copies from you years ago, going to those readers' luncheons, you know, many years ago, when we would do book signings in person. Remember those days?
Always been a good friend, Christine. You've always been very supportive to other writers, very supportive.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is, like, you know, like everybody has a different journey. And just real quick before we wrap this up and move on, I would like to know what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone who is either just venturing into writing for the first time or has been writing and struggling with it. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to someone going into this industry?
Well, if you're starting out, if you're a newbie, if you've never written anything and you're just starting to write, I would suggest you take some craft classes online. Get into a writer's group and get somebody to critique you. That was a big thing for me. I've been in a writer's group for 13 years, and it helps. It gives you somebody to brainstorm with. They catch things, they catch inconsistencies, they catch plot holes. They can help you write yourself out of a tree. I cannot stress how important, because writing is a lonely occupation. You're in your head all the time, and that's why you need to. And it's a special kind of madness, really. So you need to get with a group of similarly crazy people. And one way you can do it, the way we started our writers group, and there's all kind. You can do it online. I mean, there's no right or wrong way, but the way we did it is we just had a sign-up sheet at the local library in my little town, and people that were interested signed up, and that's how we started back in 2007. And we're still, 4 of us are still meeting today, all these years later. So I would recommend that you take some craft classes if you're just starting out. Because there are rules to good writing, and I'm not talking about commas. I'm talking about
thank God.
Story, characterization, conflict, story arc, point of view. Point of view was something that it took me a long time to finally understand, and the light bulb went off one day. Finally, I went, ah! But you know, it was not organic. So very little about writing to be published is organic. Take some classes, read some. There's a lot of good books out there on how to write. But the main thing is get feedback. Don't get your feelings hurt. Try to have a thick skin, because you know the only way you learn is to do over, figure out what you've done wrong and start over. I mean, and you never get to the point where you're a perfect writer. So it's always important to have feedback and support. And and then the main thing is sit your butt down in a chair and write. Whether you want to write longhand in a notebook, or whether you want to write online or join a fan group where you write in fan fiction, anything to get those words out. Journal, anything, any way you can get your word count up, because I read somewhere, I don't remember which pundit said it. It was a big time writer, and I can't remember his name right now because.
Was it Stephen King?
It wasn't Stephen King, but anyway, somebody that I read one time said you're not a writer until you've written a million words.
Oh,
You don't know how to write until you've written a million words.
yeah.
That's a
There's some
lot of
really
work.
good resources out there. I'll drop a link to some of the ones that I listed earlier in an earlier video. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about your book, Demon Hunting with the Sexy X. It's very
Yeah.
good. I love the series. I love the whole, I'm glad you're still writing it. I don't know how much further you're going to go with it, but I'm very excited to read the next book in the series after it comes out. It's a fun way to escape reality, which we all need to do right now. Honestly, if you enjoyed this video, people, and you really liked learning about Lexi's Demon Hunting and Dixie series, the entire series, as well as this particular book, Demon Hunting with a Sexy X. Demon Hunting with a Sexy X, right? That's right.
You got it.
I'm like, am I messing up my
No,
wine
you're
isn't
perfect.
finished yet? It's Wine Wednesday, right?
You're perfect. No, you're perfect.
Wine Tuesday, whatever. If you really liked it, please know that I do have the link to the 5th book in my description below, so you can get that. I've got all of Lexi's website, her social media contacts. Feel free to contact her that way and follow her on Amazon if you can. We're always looking for new ways to reach our readers. And this is a great series to read, especially during crazy times. I really appreciate everybody watching. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you liked it enough to want to watch more guest author interviews, between the cover type of interviews, my craft videos, or just my inspirational videos, just subscribe to my channel. I'd love to get some more channel subscribers, so working it. And I hope everybody enjoyed today's talk. Have a happy day, happy writing, and happy reading. Bye.
Thank you, Christine. Bye.